Welcome to Pandora-X. The Federation charts list it as a resource-rich biosphere. The grunts who bleed here call it the liar's garden. This isn't a jungle where the predators stalk you from the shadows. Here the predators are the things you're looking for. They are the flora imitator, the static mimics. They are a parasitic, carnivorous plant species that has evolved not to blend in with leaves, but to blend in with us. They absorb trace metals from the soil and synthesize polymer-like skins. They grow into the shapes of things a desperate soldier needs most. A shimmering medpod waiting in a clearing. A pristine ammo crate sitting next to a trail. A lost rifle leaning against a tree. They don't move. They have no heat signature. They don't trigger motion sensors. They just sit there, perfectly replicating the look and even the metallic scent of man-made equipment, waiting for you to reach out. And when you do, when your hand touches that cold metal latch, the skin splits. Instead of rations or bandages, you find a churning maw of digestive cilia, neurotoxin-coated barbs, and acid strong enough to melt bone in seconds. The mimic latches onto your arm, drags you into its root system, and you become fertilizer while still screaming. Standard operating procedure on Pandora-X is useless. You can't scan them. Their biosynthetic outer layer fools most sensors. You can't wait for them to move. The only way to survive is to assume everything is a lie until you prove it otherwise with extreme prejudice. That's why they send us. The 33rd Hazardous Environment Infantry. The poke checkers. We don't carry high-tech scanners. We don't trust HUD overlays. Our primary tools are low-tech, brutal, and undeniable. We carry massive 18-inch serrated bayonets fixed to heavy-bore kinetic rifles. We carry weighted poles tipped with thermal lances. Our rule of engagement is simple. If it isn't moving, stab it. If it bleeds, burn it. If it doesn't bleed, stab it again just to be sure. I am Sergeant Shank Corbin. Our mission: locate the crash site of a supply hauler in Sector 7, secure the cargo, and neutralize any local flora that tries to impersonate government property. We dropped into the LZ, a steaming swamp thigh-deep in black mud. The jungle here was oppressive, a wall of dark greens and browns, smelling of rotting vegetation and a faint, disturbing hint of ozone and machine oil, the scent of the mimics nearby. The silence was heavy, broken only by the wet sucking sound of our boots and the metallic shing of bayonets being fixed. All right, checkers. Eyes open, trust nothing, I growled over the localized comms. I don't care if you see your own mother sitting on a stump holding a fresh apple pie. You put steel through her before you say hello. Clear? A chorus of grim affirmations followed. We moved out in a loose wedge formation, rifles leveled, bayonets leading the way like spears. We found the crash site 2 clicks in. It was a debris field scattered across a wide clearing. The main fuselage of the hauler was broken in two, spilling cargo everywhere. It looked too good to be true. Dozens of gleaming green supply crates were stacked neatly. Rifles and helmets were scattered on the ground, looking untouched by the crash or the elements. A half-dozen cryostasis pods stood upright near the wreckage, their indicator lights blinking a welcoming green. It was a feast laid out for desperate men. And every instinct I had screamed that it was a trap. Hold position, I ordered, scanning the perimeter. The jungle wall around the clearing was still. Too still. This whole place stinks of ambush. Standard protocol. 2-man teams. Poke everything before you grab it. And I mean everything. Corporal Jax and Private Vane moved toward the nearest stack of crates. They didn't walk up to them, they stalked them. Jax raised his rifle, the massive bayonet gleaming in the filtered sunlight. He approached a large ration crate. He didn't gently prod it. He lunged, driving the steel blade with all his strength into the center of the lid. Clang. The sound was pure metal on metal. The crate dented but held. Clear. It's real, Jax grunted, pulling the blade free. Next to him, Vane approached one of the cryopods. It looked flawless. The glass front showed a frost-covered interior, empty and waiting. Looks good, Sarge. Indicator lights are active, Vane said, reaching for the release latch. Vane. Protocol. I barked. Vane flinched, then nodded. Right. Sorry, Sarge. He stepped back, adjusted his grip on his thermal lance pole, and jammed the glowing tip hard into the base of the pod. The reaction was instantaneous and horrific. The cryopod didn't spark or dent. It screamed. A wet, gurgling shriek that sounded like tearing meat. The glass front rippled and burst open, revealing not emptiness, but a pulsating mass of red and purple digestive tendrils. The metal sides peeled back like flayed skin, showing thick, ropey muscles underneath. The blinking green lights turned into hateful, glowing yellow eyes. It was a mature mimic, A massive one that had rooted itself deep. Contact. It's a live one. Vane yelled, scrambling backward in the mud as the mimic lashed out with barbed feelers, trying to snare his leg. The jungle exploded. The deception was over. The clearing wasn't a supply depot, it was a digestive tract. Around us, the scattered rifles on the ground writhed and transformed into snake-like constrictor vines with teeth. The helmets popped open like grotesque flowers, spitting streams of neurotoxic acid. Half the crates in the stacks suddenly grew spidery legs and began scuttling toward us, their lids opening to reveal gnashing bone plates. Free fire zone. Burn it all down. I roared, racking the slide of my heavy slug thrower. We opened up. This wasn't precision shooting. This was panicked, brutal crowd control against an enemy that was half plant, half nightmare. My slug thrower boomed, sending massive explosive rounds into a scuttling crate mimic. The rounds punched through the foam-metal skin, blowing out chunks of wet, fibrous biology that sprayed the air with sizzling acid. The creature shrieked and collapsed, twitching. Jax was in close quarters with a rifle mimic that had wrapped around his leg. He didn't try to shoot it. He dropped his gun, drew a combat hatchet, and started hacking wildly at the thick, rubbery vines, chopping them into writhing segments. Vane was overwhelmed by the cryopod mimic. Its tendrils had snagged his armor, dragging him toward its yawning maw. Vane. I sprinted toward him, ignoring the acid spitting from the helmet mimics around me. I reached the pod just as Vane's boots were scraping the edge of its digestive pit. I didn't have a clear shot, so I used the only tool I trusted. I reversed my rifle, holding it like a spear, and drove the 18-inch bayonet deep into what passed for the mimic's central eye cluster. The creature convulsed violently, its scream vibrating through the shaft of my rifle. It released Vane, who scrambled away coughing. The mimic thrashed, tearing itself out of the ground, revealing a massive, pulsating root ball beneath it. Thermal. Hit the root. I yelled at Jax, who had just freed himself. Jax grabbed a satchel charge, primed it, and hurled it into the exposed root mass of the giant mimic. Fire in the hole. We dove behind the real wreckage of the fuselage just as the charge blew. The explosion was muffled and wet, throwing a geyser of mud, shredded plant matter, and burning synthetic skin into the air. The cryopod mimic was vaporized from the waist down. The shockwave seemed to stun the rest of the colony. The scuttling crates slowed down. The snake rifles stopped thrashing. They were all connected, a root mine network, and we just blew up a major node. They're stunned. Push the advantage. Bayonets and burners. We moved back into the clearing, a squad of angry exterminators. We didn't shoot anymore. We stabbed. We hacked. We burned. We moved from one twitching mimic to the next, driving steel into anything that looked like it might have once been a useful object. We overturned crates, stabbing the ground beneath them. We torched the remaining helmet mimics until they were just puddles of melted polymer and ash. It was grueling, messy work. The air was thick with the smell of burnt plastic and ozone-soaked meat. We didn't stop until the entire clearing was a smoking ruin of destroyed mimicry. We finally reached the real cargo bay of the crashed hauler. Inside, buried under debris, we found the actual supply crates. They were dented, dirty, and unglamorous. I walked up to the nearest one. I was exhausted, covered in alien ichor and mud. I raised my rifle weakly. Clang. I stabbed it. Art. It held. It was real. Secure the actual cargo, I panted, leaning against the real metal hull. And double-check the bodies. Make sure none of the mimics are playing dead. We loaded up what we could carry and humped it back to the LZ. We left the crash site a burning testament to our paranoia. As we waited for the dropship, Vane sat on a log, staring at a small, perfectly formed metallic ration bar lying in the mud near his boot. It looked delicious. It looked real. He looked at me. I just nodded. Vane sighed, pulled out his combat knife and stabbed the ration bar. It didn't scream. It was just a ration bar he dropped. Better safe than plant food, Sarge, he mumbled, wiping the mud off the wrapper. Humanity had learned the hard lesson of Pandora-X. In a world that lies to your eyes, your only friends are brute force and unwavering skepticism. The jungle tried to trick us with the things we wanted most. We answered by stabbing the illusions until only the ugly, dented truth remained. We are the poke checkers. And in the liar's garden, we are the brutal truth. This has been Apex Sci-Fi. If it looks too good to be true, stab it. If you enjoyed this paranoid, visceral battle against living deception, smash that like button with a bayonet. Comment below. What object would a mimic have to become to trick you into touching it? Subscribe for the next story. The check is complete. The lies are dead. The truth is secure.